are a Sri Lankan bank. This is our home. That's why we are committed towards the future of this country, funding national development initiatives, because we believe in banking beyond transactions. HNB, your partner in progress.
This week on Lmd Tv, Anushan Selvaraja speaks with Director and CEO of Lion Brewery and Ceylon Beverage Holdings, Suresh Shah, and they discuss the impact of the COVID-19 virus on Sri Lanka's manufacturing sector.
Welcome to the show, Suresh.
Thank you, Anushan. Pleasure to be here.
Now, to start off with, how has this pandemic impacted the manufacturing sector?
So the first thing is that, the sector has been completely closed up since 20th of March because of the curfew. So I would say that other than for essential services and some of the export companies, it seems that all manufacturing industries are at the moment shut down. I mean, the entire F&B sector, other than maybe the milk category, for example, has been shut down. So yeah, I think, and everyone's waiting until we can get back to work. And the shutdown's not easy because, you've got to pay your employees, you've got to keep them in employment, suppliers are looking for payments. So there are debts have to be settled, interest has to be paid. So there are obligations that organizations need to make, for which revenue streams need to come in. And since the curfew has been imposed, those revenue streams are not coming in. So it's a difficult time. But having said that, also, Anushan, this is a serious medical crisis. And we've also got to respond appropriately and responsibly to that crisis. So it's a tough time across the board, I would say.
So what you're saying is that we must find a balance between curfew, lockdown mode, and also safeguarding the economy.
The thing is, the term balance is a tough one. You can balance these things out if you have a certain amount of resources. So let me start like this. The COVID needs two responses. One is on the medical side and the other is on the economic side. So ideally we need a two-dimensional approach to the problem, to the challenges. Now for the economic response, as a country, you need a certain level of resources. Unfortunately, because we lack the fiscal space and we lack the reserves, it's not easy to do the economic response, right? Whilst on the other hand, you have to have a medical response. If not, people in the country will fall sick and you will have very high mortality rates. In that scenario, finding a balance is extremely tough. I think the lockdown approach is the right one from a medical perspective. It's extremely challenging from an economic perspective. And ideally, the lockdown should continue until we can eradicate COVID. But economically, I don't think we can afford it. So that's why I said, I think we are in an extremely difficult situation. And finding that balance that you're speaking of is a really difficult, is a really tough thing to do.
Suresh, when we do open, how long do you think it would take our manufacturing sector to get into gear?
Yeah, I think it depends on the different organizations. We've had more than as of now, we've had more than a month to prepare for the startup, right? I think every company has been working on how they can get back to business, or at least they should have been. I know we have been. We'll be ready on day one to start our manufacturing processes and also to start our distribution. There are challenges in terms of getting people, and there are challenges in terms of how those people will come into the organization. So, for example, will they be using public transport? Will there be sufficient physical distancing within public transport? And if there isn't sufficient physical distancing within public transport once they come into office, what are the risks? So there are challenges in opening up without a doubt. But if we have to open up, yes, we are ready to open. I would assume that most companies, since they've had this last 1 month plus period, I would assume that most companies are ready. Of course, from a financial perspective, there may be some companies that are in a very tight corner. And I think they are the ones that might struggle to open up, if at all.
On that note, Suresh, now these health and safety advisories given out for the opening of their economy, are they adequate? What more can be done? What more should companies be doing?
I think companies need to do as much as they can. So, for example, let me just take you a few things that we've been doing. At the entrance to the organization, check the temperatures. Before you come into office space itself, get people to wash their hands, get people to walk through, a kind of a water bath with disinfectant in it, so that, people don't bring infection in with the soles of their shoes. Clean up the office regularly, things like the handrails, the doorknobs, etc. There needs to be a cleaning regimen, which is much more than what it was in the past. Maintain physical distancing to the extent possible inside offices, within the office space, within the lunchroom. Get people to wear the mask all the time. Tell people if they have a cold, cough, fever, don't come anywhere near the office. Avoid using public transport. So there are a number of things that organizations need to tell their employees, and the organizations themselves need to do. At the end of the day, we are responsible for our own health and safety as individuals, for our families, for our organizations, and also for our neighborhoods, the community, and at the end of the day for the country as well. Having said that, Anushan, it's, you can't cover all the gaps, right? So for example, there will be people that will have to take public transport, okay? And so there is a risk. If you're a truck driver driving from, say, Colombo to Anuradhapura, he's got to stop halfway. He's got to stop somewhere, to use the washroom, have a cup of tea. So there are risks. And you can try to mitigate a lot of those risks by doing certain things. But nevertheless, it's never going to be 100%.
Now, our population, do you think that we are socially conscious enough to adhere to all these regulations that will be in place for the foreseeable future?
Yeah. I think if the people, are really aware of the dangers that this crisis can put on the country, we can start to make them become responsible. So I think there needs to be a lot of messaging that's going out there. I would have liked to see that messaging going out extremely strong, very regular basis, saying do A, B, and C, be responsible, etc., etc. Now, having done that, Anushan, I must also say, just as much as we need to be responsible as individuals and as organizations, it's two things. Government also needs to provide a certain level of facilities, infrastructure, to make sure that the country is safe. So, for example, if you are opening up, I think testing needs to increase very, very significantly. Maybe 3, 4, 5,000. I don't know, but I think the testing needs to increase. So that's number one. Number two, there are other facilities, like, say, for example, public transport. We all know how crowded the buses get during rush hour, for example, right? And so if we are to maintain physical distancing within public transport, we need to increase the number of buses on the road, right? Without which, it's practically not possible. And even when the curfew opened up, we've seen in the last few days as well, the buses have been fairly crowded. So, that kind of support needs to come from government as well. And also, Anushan, this is a virus, right? It's extremely difficult to eradicate. And so when you open up, there is always a risk that the virus can spread. So we got to be ready with plan B as well. And I'm not a medical person, but thinking about it, I would say that being ready for it means that we have more ICU beds, we have more ventilators in place, etc., etc. So we need to have plan B in place by some chance. God willing, it won't happen, but by some chance, if there is an outbreak after opening, we need to be able to contain it.
Okay, so we must bring in all these health and safety regulations, which is, they're vital, yes. But all of this would incur some sort of a cost to the companies or brands or products. Would this cost be passed on to the consumer, or how would it work out?
So from a company perspective, at the end of the day, companies have to sell what they produce, right? Goods or services, and the market determines what those prices are. If you can sell X at price Y, and if price is B, you will sell only A, and vice versa. So companies will understand this. So I think businesses do understand that in the short to medium term, margins are likely to erode. And if that is it, so be it. But I think businesses are aware that demand is going to be sluggish going forward. People are not going to have too much money in their hands, and so I think companies are aware that they, that we are in for a bit of a rough ride in the next few months. But we've all got to face it, and we've all got to work together to get out of it. Okay. There's no way out. I mean, it's hard work, but that's it.
We're going for a short break now, Suresh. We'll be right back after a short word from our sponsors. Stay tuned.
We are a Sri Lankan bank. This is our home. That's why we are committed towards the future of this country, funding national development initiatives, because we believe in banking beyond transactions. HNB, your partner in progress.
Welcome back to the show. I'm Anushan Selvaraja, and we'll continue with our discussion with the CEO of Lion Brewery, Suresh Shah. Moving forward then, Suresh, what would be the biggest challenges faced by the manufacturing sector itself? Because we're not going to have the same type of economy going forward, right?
So a few things. So I think the immediate challenges will be in terms of how do I continue to pay my employees? How do I keep my employees in employment? Because I think that's extremely important as a country, that we understand that we need to keep people working. We can't allow unemployment numbers to go up. So there is a responsibility on that side as well. And then ideally we shouldn't, we should try to maintain wages, but it's a tough thing to do. So I think that will be one challenge. A second challenge, immediate challenge, would be around finances. Do I have sufficient working capital? Forget investments and stuff like that, but working capital to pay salaries, to get raw materials in, etc., etc. So I think that would be the second biggest challenge. The third challenge I see is that the demand in the country is going to come down for a while within Sri Lanka. Okay, because we are seeing companies do pay cuts. I think it will come to a point, or I hope it doesn't, but it can come to a point that we retrench staff as industry, and daily wage earners have taken a huge hit over the last few days. We also know the apparel sector is in really bad shape. So their employees are not, their remuneration is going to be compromised, and their employment. So I think demand inside the country is also going to come down, and then the manufacturing sector, their revenues as a result of that, at least in the immediate short term and probably the next 6 months, maybe more, will see a decline.
Now, Suresh, Japan has initiated a program where they're offering over $2 billion to their companies to relocate out of China and come back to Japan, or to spread around the Asian region. Now, would Sri Lankan manufacturers be able to get in on this to attract this business, so to speak?
Of course, I think we need to look at, in this moment in time, whatever opportunities that come our way, I think we should take, and you're very, very correct. Japan has, in fact, is trying to encourage its businesses that are located in China to find alternate manufacturing locations. Not just Japan, I think a lot of organizations will look at doing that to diversify their risk. And no reason why Sri Lanka shouldn't hunt after those, at least some of those enterprises, to see if we can attract them. So certainly, yes, that's one thing we need to do. Fortunately, tea prices have been holding up. And I think we need to leverage on that to the extent possible. And oil prices have, they're at zero at the moment. So we really need to take advantage of that as well. And at the end of the day, every crisis, it gives opportunities. and I believe that there will be new business opportunities that come out of this crisis. And if Sri Lanka can be one of the first countries off the block in taking some of those new opportunities, and if we can push our private sector in that direction, who knows, we may come out of this crisis in the medium term in a pretty significant growth phase. And it's possible, so let's hope that happens.
Finally, moving on to policies then, Suresh. The policies brought in by the state, are they adequate? Or if not, what more would you like to see moving forward?
Okay, so in the immediate term, right, which is the very, very short term, there are, we have to have a medical response, and that medical response to a great extent has been in place. Our numbers, although it's gone up, but there again, I think, like I said earlier, we should be bumping up testing. We should be looking at investing more in the ICU beds and in the ventilators, and I think we need to do that in the short term. Because we need to be ready if there is a spike that comes, a second round comes. So that's on the medical front. On the economic front, we've just had a task force being appointed a few days back. So we really don't know from a government policy perspective what the economic response is going to be. We still don't know. I mean, government hasn't announced it. I think it's extremely important that we try to keep demand up, right? Secondly, I think it's extremely important that we maintain employment levels in the country. We shouldn't allow unemployment to spike. And thirdly, there are, I think about 2 million, we have about 2 million daily wage earners within our workforce, and they must have, they've been out of work for the last more than a month. So they need to be protected. So the underprivileged basically needs to be protected. So these are three key things: protect the underprivileged, put money in the hands of consumers, and protect employment. So two things we can do to address these three challenges. One is to put money into the hands of consumers. So I know there is a Samurdhi program, but whether 5,000 rupees a month is good enough is a huge question mark. I think we need to put more money in the hands of in the hands of the underprivileged, the daily wage earners, etc. And we need to do whatever we can to protect employment levels, right? And if that means a wage subsidy from government, particularly to the affected industries, I'm not saying to all industries, but definitely apparel, definitely the leisure sector, the hotel sector, and both these employ a lot of people. In the medium to the long term, I think we have opportunity. The crisis needs to be seen as an opportunity to push the reforms that are so essential for this country. So amongst some of those things that I would look at, exports, we need to broad base both our export basket and our export markets. Okay, that I would say is one thing we need to do. We can use tools like the FTAs to do that, right? I think that we need to relook at our entire agriculture sector. I mean, we've seen how important food security is over the last 1.5 months. So I think we need to completely relook at how our agriculture sector, we need to modernize it. We need to focus on productivity. The entire supply chain from farm gate to consumer needs to be relooked at, and we need to make that productive and effective. It also needs some deep reforms. For example, land reform would be critical to get agriculture productivity numbers up. We also need, you asked me about attracting businesses from China, the ones that are looking to relocate. We should do that, but to do that, to attract not just those investments, but any investments going forward, we need to really work on our ease of doing business numbers. We need to make Sri Lanka an extremely easy place to do business. And, there is a World Bank ranking. Personally, I think we need to get to the top 20 within the next 5 years. So then we really need to reimagine that ease of doing business space. And another big area that requires reform is the SOE sector, state-owned enterprises. It puts a lot of pressure on our budgets, on the country's budget, and I think the reforms need to come. And I would look at joint ventures, I would look at listings of SOEs, and I would look at also privatizing the non-strategic enterprises.
Well, let's keep our fingers crossed and hope for the best. Thank you very much for joining us, Suresh.
Thank you, Anushan. Pleasure. Thanks.
That was our show for the week. Tune in next week at the same time on www.lmd.lk and LMD's Facebook page as we continue our focus on the impact of this pandemic on our economy. Thank you and stay safe.
We are a Sri Lankan bank. This is our home. That's why we are committed towards the future of this country, funding national development initiatives, because we believe in banking beyond transactions. HNB, your partner in progress.